Android provides some convenient ways to handle JSON data, making it easy to work with. With our app connected to and receiving weather data in the JSON format, let's take a look at how we can leverage the tools provided by Android to parse the weather data to get the information our app will use. We have our new data model object, current weather. Let's put it to use in main activity. So under our tag here, let's create a new private current weather object, and we'll call it current weather. Now we'll want to set this once we have a successful response. So we scroll down to our onResponse, and inside our if statement here, where our response is successful, let's set current weather, and we'll set it to a new method that we'll define here in a moment. We'll call it getCurrentDetails. We'll want to pass in JSON data. We can use the response.body that we have up here in our tag. But let's actually refactor that into a variable and use it in both places. String JSON data. Now we can pass in JSON data. Okay, now let's use the quick fix provided by Android Studio. If we put there, Alt-Enter, create method. And again, we want that in activity, not in our onCreate anonymous callback. Next, we're going to work with a special class called JSON object. This class is able to hold any object represented in JSON format and provides a few different methods to access the properties inside the JSON data. The JSON object class has a constructor that lets us pass in a string of JSON data to create the new JSON object. Fortunately, that's just what we have as a parameter. Let's create a new JSON object inside our new method. JSON object. Call it forecast, because that's what we're getting back. We see that we have an error here. If we hover over it, we see that it is an unhandled exception. This is similar to the I/O exception we've previously seen, but this is a JSON exception. Just like we've done before, we can use the quick fix to add a try-catch. Now, while this works, this isn't ideal. It would be better if we could have the exception handled where the getCurrentDetails method is called. Up here, where the I/O exception is being caught. It would be great if we could get this new exception to bubble up and be caught up here. We can do that with the throws keyword. Back here in getCurrentDetails, let's undo our try-catch block. And after our method signature and before the curly brace, we want to type throws. And then we need the specific type of exception. In this case, it is a JSON exception. This moves the responsibility of exception handling from this line here in getCurrentDetails to up here where the method is called. We see now in onResponse where getCurrentDetails is called, it has an error. Since we're already inside a try block, we can catch the JSON exception down here. We'll catch the JSON exception. And we'll add a log statement for it. Now our code is a bit more organized since our exceptions are all being handled in one place. With that exception handled, we can continue to set our JSON object. Let's take a quick look at the Android documentation on JSON object. Let's see what types of data we can get. We see that this class has several methods that allow to get different types of data. Strings, ints, booleans, JSON arrays, even other JSON objects. We'll see some of these methods used in other projects as well. Let's take another look at our data as a guide for how we should parse our JSON object. The JSON object forecast that we just created in our code corresponds to this root object up here. Remember, our root object starts with the first opening brace. We're passing latitude and longitude in as parameters to the API call, so we don't need to worry about those. Let's use this time zone field as an example to start. Time zone, in all lowercase, is the key we want to get. The value is enclosed in double quotes. That tells us that it is a string value. Let's go back to our getCurrentDetails method. So we can access this time zone and write it to the log. So string time zone. We're going to get forecast, get string. We need to pass in the key we want. We said that it was time zone in all lowercase. And we want to log that. So log I, tag, say from JSON plus our time zone. Cool. We should test this out just to make sure we are, in fact, getting what we're expecting. This is important, especially when trying to parse through complex data. Building things one step at a time and verifying them along the way is a great habit to get into. Otherwise, you can end up with a lot of code that can be broken in multiple places. Now, before we run it, we have another error here because we aren't returning anything. Let's just return null for now. Run our app. And checking here in the logcat, here's our parsed data from JSON, America, Los Angeles. It's working. That's great. Let's take a quick break and we'll get our current weather all set up when we come back.